Knowledge is power. Make an impact by learning more, or hire us to do it for you. Let us focus on what we do best so you can stay focused on what you do best. Find all of our options under services, one-to-one training, subscription-based training, or accounting and business consulting.
It's, even Facebook is a shiny object syndrome.
Oh, Facebook is the worst. It is. I've gotten to the point more and more where I go on it and I'm like, what am I doing here? Like, there's nothing productive that's happening about me being here. And I get that sometimes that's the point. We want to go on Facebook, to unwind and relax. And even there, I'm finding there's better ways. Like last night I had an appointment over on the other side of the hill here in Los Angeles, and I had to go to Beverly Hills. And I got there about an hour early. And what I did was I went to a Starbucks, got myself a cappuccino, and popped open my tablet and started reading my current book. Because one of my goals this year is to move more. I don't expect I'll actually do it, at least not in the beginning. But my goal is to get to the point where I can read a book a week. Right on. And so I sat and I read on my tablet, and I love doing this. As many of you know, I don't really read. I study books. If I'm not studying the book, there's not much point in reading it because I'm not going to remember anything. And the kind of stuff I read is stuff that I'm trying to learn from. So I have my tablet open in front of me, and I'm just falling more and more in love with OneNote, because then I have OneNote open on this thing, and I'm reading on the tablet and taking notes on here in OneNote. And I have a notebook in OneNote for the book itself. And that way I can create my sections and pages and keep track of, what I'm learning from the book, taking those notes, and then, writing my thoughts around what my action plan is going to be for how I'm going to take what I'm learning and actually incorporate it into my life. Because if I don't do that, it's going to be a great read, and it's going to be like going in one side of the brain and out the other. And it's not going to do me any good, other than 6 months from now, I'll talk to Matthew and say, hey, I read that book and it was pretty good. But I can't really say much more about it because I didn't actually do anything with the information. Mm-hmm. Right? So Matthew, go read that book and tell me what you think.
I'll tell you about it next Wednesday.
Okay. So, I'm really
So, Seth, you are multi-devicing.
I am multi-devicing.
I'm doing that more and more myself. Mm-hmm. Phone in one hand, tablet in another. Or it could be other devices. Tablet and Chromebook.
Yeah, I just as easily could have, flipped between my Nook app on my tablet and OneNote on my tablet, but I find this is easier, and it just helps me to stay focused, Mm-hmm. See, Matthew? And
of course.
How many people carry two laptops with them at the same time? Like, it's just ridiculous sometimes.
Well, sometimes.
Well, my new computer that I got, because I went through a whole nightmare with my computer in December, I'm so glad I got what I got, and I really kind of got it accidentally because I was trying to get a new ThinkPad, and a really beefed up, really powerful one. Long story short, it arrived and it wouldn't power up, and I sent it back, had a whole thing, and it was not a cheap computer. I mean, like I said, it was beefed up, so really advanced graphics card, 2 terabyte solid state hard drive, like everything sort of jacked up. I sent it back. The guy got it back. He said it powered up just fine. I said, well, I don't know what to tell you. It didn't power up for me. And it's not just me. I actually brought it to Best Buy because I'm like, damn, brand new computer. Maybe I'm missing something. And right in front of me, the guy tried different power sources, and the guy at Best Buy couldn't get it to fire up either. So anyway, long story short, I was heading out the next day to go to be with my parents because my aunt had passed away. And I was like, I'm not leaving California without a computer. At this point, I'd gone a few days already waiting for the one to arrive that I had ordered through Amazon. And so I went to Best Buy, and I just walked in there, and I kind of looked at the guy and I said, show me the most powerful machine you have here. Because I knew nothing on their shelves was going to be anywhere as powerful as what I had attempted to buy. So I was just going to get the most powerful thing I could get there. And he showed me this computer, and it's an Asus, and I have it, and it's thin, it's lightweight, and it's actually still pretty powerful. What they've done is it's got a hybrid, hold on, let me just let Melissa in here. It's got a hybrid solid state versus, I guess, regular hard drive. So it boots up on the solid state, so it boots up quickly, but then there's 2 terabytes of storage in a standard hard drive, which is where the more sort of long-term permanent storage goes. So it's nice. That saves probably a lot of money as opposed to having a full 2 terabyte solid state hard drive, So, and the graphics card is really good. It's not as good as what I would have had, but it's so far I'm rendering videos in Camtasia and having no issues, right? So bottom line, I got this really cool lightweight laptop that weighs a fraction of what the ThinkPad weighs. The ThinkPad's a brick, right? I mean, these things are huge. They're powerful, but they're huge. They're really like desktop computers packed into a laptop, compartment. So it is, Katrina, a year of change for sure. And I'm really glad that I have this. And like you said, Gene, I really enjoy having like the tablet experience with the mobile device where like I said, I'm just reading and taking notes and, really starting to live more and more with intention and saying, I've had an outline that I developed like 3 years ago for how to structure my life. And I've probably only kept to about half of it. So this year, my intention.
Doing better than a lot of other people too, though.
Probably, and better than I was before I came up with that outline. But my plan and intention this year is to do even better, And I'm talking about the outline I teach in 97 and up. It's, where you break your life up into 6 main areas: body, mind, spirit, time, people, and money. And part of the mind part is the reading part. So, and that's one of the things I really haven't done. So I said, I'm going to make it my goal to read a book a week. I know I'm not going to read a book a week right away because reading is one of those things. It's a skill you develop. You get better and faster at it as you go, the more you do it, and the point is not to just read, but to read with comprehension, right?
And part of it is keeping that tablet around you. When you're on Kindle, I find there's a lot of little spots during the day that I could have my tablet and be reading.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. Every time I pop open the Facebook tab on my browser is probably a good indicator I should close that tab and pop open my tablet and read a chapter, right?
So true. So true.
But we all know when people are usually using Facebook, right? So you don't usually have enough time to read a whole chapter, I don't think. It would be the only challenge.
It depends. It might be that, it depends on what you're reading too. Like what I'm reading now is a book. A lot of people, it's kind of like one of those Think and Grow Rich type book. It's called The Richest Man in Babylon. And it's a short, easy read. The whole book is like 115 pages. So the chapters are short. So you can get through a chapter in 15 minutes easily, And or even if I get through part of the chapter, like the chapter I was reading last night, I read for about an hour actually, and I wasn't quite through the chapter, so I take that back. But in that hour, I got through a good chunk of the chapter and got to a very good, clean stopping point, where I then had to just pack it up, throw it in my backpack. And that's going back to your comment, Gina. I always have it with me because my tablet is always in my backpack, and my backpack might as well be surgically attached to me because I never go anywhere without it. I just don't. It comes with me into my therapy sessions.
You ever have problems finding stuff in the right pocket in the right time?
No, because I'm like insanely mental about how I organize my stuff. So everything always goes in the same place, always.
It has a spot, and that's where it lives. Yeah. And if it's not there, there's a problem.
I've learned that the hard way because the second I put something elsewhere, I can't find it. And I go crazy until I find it and say, that's what happens when I don't put it in the place where it's normally supposed to go.
Yep, exactly. I want to just say something real quick. You can go on the Intuit Pro Advisor site and buy those backpacks that Matt just had.
Yeah.
I don't know how I stumbled on it this past week, but you can go in and you can buy QuickBooks, promotional items.
It's their new marketing hub. So inside, if you're going the Pro Advisor, like you're saying, QuickBooks Online, go to your Pro Advisor tab, then you search through your different functions. There's probably a much easier way to get to it, of course. And then you click for the marketing area, and it will take you to a store where you can look at all their different swag to purchase.
Nice.
And cheap enough that you can hand them out to your clients if you'd like.
Nice.
I have a delivery coming today.
Is that backpack like a good backpack? I mean, is backpacks go?
It's the backpack that Matt had.
I know, but I'm not familiar with it because I live with my Swiss gear, and I love my Swiss gear.
The one they gave out at QuickBooks Connect.
I believe so, yes.
And it's really nice. I use mine.
And it's strong, it's durable, because that was always my problem before. I would buy these cheap backpacks and they would tear on me, and because mine tends to get heavy. Do we have a lot of good compartments?
The stuff that Seth and I use, this is a bigger one that's TSA compliant and has USB plugins and 45 more pockets than are necessary.
Nice.
The Intuit one does a good job. We got basic pockets here. some basic lining to it. Other swag still in there. I think the coolest part for me is the top pocket that you can access through the top or through the inside. So you can put your wallet. Well, you probably don't want to put your wallet in there because somebody would steal it easy. I wish they had like a hidden compartment would be great, especially since we're accountants and always worried about having like stuff stolen.
Mm-hmm.
But they're great gifts to a family member is a way I would say it, or potentially to new clients. That would be pretty cool that way.
Nice.
That's you and I carry like a lot of gear and a lot of computers.
Yeah.
I think you'll break.
Yeah, that's always my concern. That's why I've come to rely entirely on my Swiss gear, because those things are made for the kind of stuff that we do. You know, they're like $100 for a backpack, but it's worth it because it holds up.
Yes. Yeah.
When I was in New York.
It was for carrying a laptop specifically, but the backpack is so much better.
They had a backpack like 3 years ago. Now that one, like Sarah Prevost, I believe, has one of those. That one looks cool looking.
What do you mean, QuickBooks?
Yeah, QuickBooks Connect.
Yes, I have one of those still.
That one looks neat.
It's not very sturdy though, and it doesn't carry a lot, but it is very cool looking, definitely. Yeah. But there's also the thing of wanting something that is that will protect against the weather. If it rains or if it snows, and you've got to go out, that really helps.
Got it. Oh, you know what? Let me share this video into the Facebook group. I still haven't played with the start a watch party thing. Matthew, have you played around with it? Do you know what this is?
Yeah, actually, that's a good point. So doing a watch party makes it to where something can be shown as if it's live on your page.
Oh, okay. Okay. That's the stuff Hector's been doing a lot lately.
His is a little bit different because he's using a different type of an app for it.
Okay.
But I think they're trying to combat against that by doing the watch parties. And the concept of it is that you would sit there and you would be watching it with everybody, even after the fact, and everybody can be commenting and so forth. Premieres is another really cool one.
Mm-hmm.
I saw that. I set one, like a video that I uploaded, and tried to set up a premiere, and I have no idea what I did or how it worked or why I did it. It didn't seem to do anything.
What was neat, we did a Friday Night Accountants. Linda and I did it, it's been like 3 weeks, I think, since she was out here. And we set up a premiere on Facebook, and then through Zoom, scheduled the meeting on the backside. You and I talked about it like very briefly, Seth, but it had like has the Zoom logo on it, but we were able to set it up to where it would launch the Zoom meeting. We sent out invites to everybody so the people that were panelists could jump right in as panelists. And then it automatically went live on Facebook for us, making it super easy. But it did the whole premiere concept where it like counted down to the launch of it for the last 2 minutes before we actually went live. It's kind of neat.
I must have missed something, because I know I uploaded a video to Facebook, to my page, and it gave me the option to schedule a premiere or whatever. And I did it, and then I didn't understand what to do next. So maybe I have to take another look at it. And my problem with these things sometimes, especially these days, is I'm moving so fast that I don't have the patience to stop and understand how it works. Probably not as much as I used to. I think I used to have a lot more patience to slow down and figure these things out. Now I'm like, if it's not immediately clear to me, I'm out. I'm like, I have things to do.
I'll say
that's another lesson for this year, is I got to learn to slow down.
I think they changed the watch party policy, because when it first came out, I was getting pulled into like a bunch of off the wall watch parties that I didn't ask to be invited to. And so I think they've really made it a lot more difficult. Maybe these bots that you're talking about are apps they've really scaled back on. So, but I think it would be helpful for your group, Seth, for the 97 or Between the Walls, to put that out there and say, hey, I'm going online. You're part of my group. You probably want to be part of this.
Yeah.
I know I would.
I have to think about that, because I haven't said anything to anyone about this yet, but starting Monday, I have plans for Facebook Lives that I was planning on doing just right in the group. every day. I have topics and outlines, and so each day is a different sort of underlying subject. And so maybe I should think about how to do it. Because what's the difference between this and just going into Zoom and using Zoom to go live in the Facebook group? And the only reason I would do that rather than just going live directly on Facebook is the main difference is with Zoom, I can share my screen and switch back and forth between that and my camera. When you just go directly live on Facebook, you have to pick one and then you're stuck with that one, whether it's sharing your screen or showing your face. So maybe, Matthew, if you have time later today, maybe we can talk and you can show me around a bit on this. And Brian, you too, because it's one of those things where I don't have the time or patience to try and figure it out myself. Because like I said, my intention was to just set up a private little webinar in Zoom and use that to go live in the Between Wall and Main Facebook group, which probably worked just fine for what I'm trying to do. But I'm curious because I could see where it could be interesting and fun to do like a watch party or account. So the purpose of the watch party is to take something that's already been recorded or whatever, and then just watch it together and comment and whatnot.
That's what I thought. I'd like to know. Matt, can you set this up?
I can.
Let's do a Facebook or something to get together and learn this together.
I think it's a great idea. One of the biggest things I would like to learn, which would help a lot of these things, is there's ways in Zoom you can make somebody able to be like an alternate host. Mm-hmm. So perfect example would be like, what I'd love to be able to do, Gina, is for your show later today, as an example, it would be great if there was a way that through Zoom, I could actually still launch the event, right, and do the watch party type thing, but not bombard it, not take it onto my channel, have it still on your channel, or same thing like for you, Seth, it's on your Zoom, right? Mm-hmm. But I'm able to help like put it together piecewise.
Yeah.
And I don't know if there's a good way to do that. Like co-host is really what it's supposed to be, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Matt, I'll make you co-host before our Zoom, and we'll see what we can do with it.
Okay. I've been playing, you guys know me, I push buttons. Sometimes you'll find like...
Sometimes the results are good, sometimes they're bombs.
Matt, I just made you a co-host of this Zoom. I don't know.
None at all.
I don't know if anything looks different for you, but you are now a co-host. It moved you up to the top of the participant list.
Oh, see, I always thought that, okay, I don't know how it works from everybody else's view, but I always seem like I'm up towards the top on here, and I didn't know if that's something people choose.
No, the order is different for everybody. It's weird.
Yeah, and because it's you, it puts you at the top.
Boy, that feeds to your ego, doesn't it?
Sure does.
Sorry.
Sure does. All right, let's get into this. I actually wanted to talk today about some of the recent posts, questions that we've had in the Between Wall and Main Facebook group. But first, let's go through the questions. A couple of you asked some fun questions when you registered for this today. So let me just clear these dumb notifications off my desktop. This is getting so annoying where every little website and application is trying to serve desktop notifications. And if you're not careful and moving quickly like I do, you end up actually opting in for these desktop notifications, and they just get so annoying. They're so disruptive. Speaking of distractions. All right, so Matthew asked, are all CAPTCHAs designed to make you feel stupid? I think they are.
I hate those things. Like, they'll ask you for a fire hydrant, and there will be a little half of a fire hydrant in a corner.
Yeah.
Like, really?
Yeah, I hate those ones where they give you the pictures, and you have to select all the pictures that have a fire hydrant in it or something.
And signs are the worst.
Yeah.
I mean...
If it's got a picture of a sign, right, and it's got a little bit of the corner in one of the boxes, do I check that box or do I not check the box? Like,
what about the street light post?
Oh.
Do you go all the way down or just the street light?
Okay, but they are better than the stupid letters that you can never tell were they capital or lowercase, and they were overlapping. Like, that is...
But I get frustrated as hell because it just slows you down. It's another thing that just slows you down. Like, if you're going to give me some kind of a CAPTCHA, at least make it quick, you know? But these things with the pictures, it's like, now I'm doing puzzles, really? Like,
right.
Give me a freaking crossword puzzle
I love that I am not a robot, except that one time I got an error message. Wait a minute. I know whether I'm a robot or not. You can't tell me that's an error.
Skynet prevails.
That's hilarious. So the next question, and this is from Linda, who's not here. She said she has an appointment and has to miss the show. But she wants to know, this is Linda's question, is Matthew Fulton a brat? So we don't have
self-answering.
We don't have to answer that. But, you know, the question was asked, so I thought I'd put it out there for the masses.
Somebody's phoning in an answer. Who's that?
Somebody's phoning it in. It's Linda. She's calling in. All right. I'm closing up my Excel sheet here.
Thanks, Linda.
Yep. And Linda, it looks like, was watching online on Facebook. She writes, wish I could be on today. Great topics. So anyway, those of you who are in 97 Up, by the way, got access to this document. I shared it with you this morning. I think I want Squeen 2. Yes, I do. All right, so here's my little document. I went in and bookmarked some of these posts that I wanted to look over. So the first one was a great discussion. Suchi, who is often on these calls with us, says, pulling my hair out, QBO is frustrating. I really don't understand how you all, Seth, love it. Client use QBO for payroll. I see a paycheck is already cleared, but I can't see what it's matched to. Please advise because the check is clearing the bank again. Need to figure out if something's wrong or something. All right, hold on. Somebody's pinging us in the chat. Oh, Gina's saying it's small and hard to see. See, that's the first time in a while I've had that issue, so I will share it on my other screen. Let's switch it around. We will try it this way. All right, is that better?
Way better.
Yes.
Much better, much better. Thank you.
Oh, whitey then. So the bottom line issue here is when you're using QBO Payroll, the paychecks don't get marked with that online banking link that you can click over to see exactly what it's matched to. Ultimately, it turns out that she said that the check is clearing the bank again. Now, so of course, this is open for all of us to discuss. I'll throw my comments out there and then I'll shut up and let everyone discuss this. Here's the thing. When it comes to like, if it's a reconciled period, right? If it's a period in the past that's already been reconciled, I no longer care about the bank feeds or what anything is matched to. I go to the source. The source is the bank statement. Or if you will, I'll download the bank statement source in the form of a CSV file, which to me is the best way, because now I can quickly confirm by sorting the transactions in Excel if there's an amount that shows up twice in the outgoing funds, right? Because I can easily break up that CSV download between money in versus money out, and then I can sort the money out transactions by amount, and I can look for the amount. If it shows up twice, then I just need to confirm that it shows up twice in QuickBooks and that both have been marked reconciled, right? And if not, then I don't care about the bank feeds at that point. I now know what needs to be done. If I have both transactions in QuickBooks and they're both reconciled, then accounting, bookkeeping, banking-wise, it's all correct. The fact that the paycheck got honored twice is another issue that we now have to follow up with the bank on and say, hey, bank, why did you honor this twice, right? It should only have been paid once. And this happens more and more these days because we're depositing checks with our mobile devices, right? And then it could be an honest mistake. I deposit it with my mobile device. Now the check is sitting on my desk and I'm like, oh, I never deposited this. Now I take it to the bank and deposit it. But usually the banks are pretty good about flagging that and saying, hey, this check has already been deposited. We're not going to pay it again. But obviously things can slip through the cracks still. So for me, the moral of the story at the end of the day on this question is forget the bank feeds. Just go to the source. Go to the actual bank statement. Use your CSV download. Hone those Excel skills because your Excel skills are going to make you the best auditor possible. And that's what we're doing at the end of the day, even though we don't like to call it auditing because there are implications with that term. So never tell your client you're auditing their books unless you're an actual CPA certified to do audits. But short of that, your analytical skills, your ability to troubleshoot stuff like this is going to be vastly improved if you hone those Excel skills and learn how to, how to quickly cut up data like that so I can get, because this problem would have taken me less than 5 minutes to resolve. Because like I said, I would download the CSV, cut it up by amount, sort it, and then compare that with what's in QuickBooks. And hopefully we all know, let me show you a couple things that maybe, for probably a lot of us, this is well known and obvious, but for others who may be watching later, it may not be. Actually, let me go to the dummy file. But what I've learned also, especially on a situation like this, where I'm trying to troubleshoot, transactions in a bank account, let's just say, is the using the filters within the register are really handy and make it really easy. They're pretty powerful, actually. So I'm going to go into the QuickBooks Online test drive. See, I am not a robot. Whenever I see this, that's how I hear it in my head. I am not a robot.
I think about the time on your show when somebody actually asked that to you, and it was hilarious.
Yeah, that was Elizabeth, actually, who asked. I forget what the actual question was, but it was very funny. Like, what if I am a robot or something like that?
Yeah.
All right, so let's go to our chart of accounts.
So, Seth, the only question I have about with what you're talking about, if the bank feeds are set up and if payroll is being processed inside QuickBooks Online, you shouldn't ever have, there shouldn't be a reason why the transaction's already in the system before the bank feed would process through. Now, if you had a situation where you had people being paid the same amount, or if you had a salaried employee that had the same reoccurring amount happening over and over again, but you hadn't cleared your bank feeds for some time, that's an area where you'd have multiple matches possibly for the same item. Mm-hmm. Or if you had a situation that the items were deposited when you're running your payroll, you can choose your payroll account and you can unofficially change it in QuickBooks Online. So it kind of went to the wrong account, but the money still comes out of the right account. That would be a situation where you could have something cleared already, but then the bank feed come through and try to match to it because it would be twice.
Even there, at the end of the day, if I have two transactions for the same amount and both cleared, I don't necessarily care that much if I cross them in terms of matching, as long as, because at the end of the day, what I care about is how it's reconciled. The bank feeds is just a tool in between. Ultimately, I just need to know it's reconciled. I need to know that if it cleared the bank, it's in QuickBooks and I've checked it off, right? So it's almost like reconciling supersedes or overrides anything I did with the bank feeds, in my opinion. I mean, if I really want to, I can go and unmatch and rematch them if I have two transactions for the same amount, and especially if the timing date-wise is way off from one another, like let's say one's on the 2nd of the month and the other's on the 25th, and somehow I got them crisscrossed in the matching because I didn't match them, any of them, until the end of the month. So even there, though, if I'm in the habit of updating bank fees weekly, which I normally, that's how we do it, and that's how I recommend everybody do it, is at least update it weekly. That will prevent from that kind of thing happening. But at the end of the day, if my concern is that I think I have a paycheck that was actually paid twice in error, the bottom line is I still have two transactions for the same amount that cleared the bank, that the bank honored, which means I need both of them in QuickBooks. Then I can follow up with the bank and say, hey, we need to, somehow we need to get this money back, right? Or I may need to provide the proof and then confirm with the employee, hey, you got paid twice. We're going to take this amount out of your next paycheck. And don't ever do that again. The first time's a warning. The second time you're out, because it's hard to say what, again, it could be done very accidentally. But at the end of the day, it's my responsibility to know when I've deposited something with my mobile. And the bank, if you read the terms, because I actually do read this stuff, sometimes because I'm curious, sometimes because I'm just nuts, but I actually read this stuff. The terms that you agree to when you use the banking mobile deposit feature, you actually sort of warranty to the bank that you will not try and deposit that check twice. And the bank can penalize you for it if you do, even if it's an accident. But the way to troubleshoot this stuff, like I said, is go to the source, get the PDF at least, but better yet, get the CSV, because I can sort that so I can identify things quickly. And then we're going to filter this. I use these filters a lot to find stuff. And oftentimes I'll filter for the date range, right? And then once I'm filtered, you can also sort by the reconcile status. Right now, here in the sample company, I have one thing that's reconciled. And this is important for everybody to know. And like I said, I'm sure all of you here know it. Maybe, I don't know, maybe somebody doesn't. Bottom line is, an R means it's reconciled. It means I went through the reconciliation process and checked it off and completed that reconciliation. A C means it's cleared. That means it's been matched up with online banking, right? And so what I'll see sometimes is if I have two transactions, let's say I've duplicated the transaction in QuickBooks, and in fact, it only cleared the bank once. And here's what I'll see happen. And how that can happen is a number of things. I can add it manually in the register, by actually recording the expense, and then I download it and add it in instead of matching it. And now I've got two versions in QuickBooks. Then I go to reconciling. What I've seen happen in some cases is I have, two transactions for the same amount here in the register. One is reconciled, the other is not. But the one that wasn't reconciled is the one that I matched up to the online banking, right? And the one that I reconciled was the one that wasn't matched to the online banking and just got added in manually. So in that case, you can actually just unreconcile the one you reconciled, reconcile the one that was matched with the online banking, and then delete the duplicate that wasn't matched to anything. That's the easiest way to clean that up. But the way to find the stuff very quickly is using these filters, isolating it by date range, and oftentimes I'll even use the reconciled status because within that date range, I might want to see only things that are reconciled. I usually want to start with all because, like I said, I'm looking for that case where I have the same transaction twice, one's reconciled, one isn't, right? But in the case that Suchi described here, what we have actually is two transactions, both were paid. And it sounds like it was actually it was a duplicate of, it was the same paycheck paid twice because apparently somehow it got presented for a deposit twice. And like I said, that's happening. It used to be you would deposit the check, it was gone. There was no ability to deposit it again. But because we've got mobile banking now where we can deposit the checks with the app, we still have the physical check, which can then be presented to the bank for deposit a second time. And it could be an innocent mistake, or it could be somebody thinking they're going to get one over on people. But that's why reconciling is still so important, so you can catch these kind of things.
Reconciliation's everything.
Yep. That's why I kind of hate the fact that Xero doesn't really give you a true reconciliation process. It's just you're reconciling daily to everything. It's, it doesn't force me to stop and actually do the process and take a close look at things to make sure.
So again, everybody here knows this good example as well, that just because your balance is right doesn't mean it's reconciled. When we do a lot of rebuild work, we love that. And you can have two transactions missing for $10,000 each.
Mm-hmm. Both going the other way.
Exactly. That's huge.
That's why, and I often tell this story, I won't plug a single number no matter how small. Because years ago, when I would still go on site, I had a client where I was trying to reconcile their bank account. It was off by $100. It's a pretty big company. It was a security company. $100 was nothing to them. They said, don't worry about it. Just adjust it. And I said, no, give me 30 minutes with this. If I don't find it in 30 minutes, I won't bill you for the time. And sure enough, at the end of that 30 minutes, I found it was exactly like you described, Matt, but it was actually $10,000 one way and $9,900 the other way. Two unrelated transactions. So when you look at the absolute value of the misstatement of the financial information, we're talking almost $20,000 that just looked like $100, right? So when the client saw that, they said, by all means, please proceed. They never asked me to plug a number again because you just don't know what's buried inside what looks like a small difference.
How many people on right now actively use bank feed rules in all of their files, like to process transactions?
I do.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah, we make it a point with every new client up front. We make rules like crazy, and it takes more time up front, but then as you go, it takes less and less time. And there's a clear economy of scale to where our whole bank feed update process, especially because we do it weekly, takes no more than about 15 minutes for most clients, even with many bank accounts and credit cards.
So Matt, Matt, are you talking QBO or QB desktop?
QBO.
Okay.
Well, first QBO, but then of course,
it should be both.
Desktop, but big QBO is what I was asking about.
Well, I just mentioned that because Matt, you had said something about bank rules like really bogging down the database.
Yeah, especially so for QuickBooks Desktop, big time. The difficulty with QuickBooks Desktop when you're dealing with renaming rules, because it's different there, you're required in Desktop to provide a payee name first, and then you match it with a memo to then actually assign it to a certain vendor, to a vendor or payee. So you end up having to create a lot more rules to make them effective in desktop, and the more rules you create, that dramatically drags down the software. I mean, you'll start to notice desktop starts to come to a crawl when you start having, even if you have like 60 rules, which is easy to do over time.
FedEx and UPS.
Yeah.
Are big ones because they have numbers after them each time. So if you create an alias, each month you get that.
Yeah. So that's where, shameless little plug, Vendor Sync would be huge and helpful for desktop because it circumvents a lot of that stuff. But on QuickBooks Online, I did want to ask, since everybody's using rules there, do you guys feel that that's like if you end an agreement with a client, would you take the rules out if you could? Is that your intellectual property?
No, I don't care. Like, why would I do that? That to me is almost like maybe I'm thinking of it differently, but the feeling I get when you even bring that up is that it would be very like sort of tit for tat, like nasty, like you're just trying to stick it to the client for leaving you. Like, I don't know. It just.
First of all, I don't want to take the time. Number one, I don't want to take the time. Number two, if they have paid me to do something, I've done it, they paid me, that's in the past.
Yeah. I guess my question back to you, Matthew, would be why would you worry? Why would you care about that?
It's so probably because one of the things that we suffer with is we haven't been charging enough for the work we do. So sometimes you have a situation where I don't think it's exactly appreciated, all the work that goes into, like you're saying, creating the rules and doing all that stuff. Mm-hmm. I brought it up because they've just recently added the ability now you can delete the bank rules. I can say there's probably only been one time that it was really a tit for tat where it was like, okay, well, I'm going to remove the rules because person didn't want to pay their bill and didn't appreciate any of it.
Right.
But there's a certain aspect of, we put a lot of energy into creating bank rules. We have a whole process to it, a way we structure them, all that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. And from that aspect of it, that's a lot of the automation we provide. So if we were to really do a rebuild for a client, we put all these rules in, we put all this time and energy into like getting everything cleaned up. Well, great. Now they take off. They, for the rest of the year, can have a good portion of all their bookkeeping automated and not pay somebody.
So what I would say to that is increase your rates so you're getting paid for it. Just charge more in the first place.
Yeah, charge for a bank feed setup.
Yeah, and if you're like negotiating with a client because the client's giving you a hard time about the rate, use that. Explain that. Say, here's one of the reasons we charge more. This is one of the ways in which we bring tremendous value. You may not see it. You'll feel it certainly because you'll get your information in much better real-time capacity. Right? In other words, you're going to be able to get real-time reporting every week on a schedule, and that stuff's going to be completely up to date, right? Which people who aren't going to the lengths that you go to with the rules maybe can't deliver that. That's the distinction and value that you're offering.
Yeah.
And I say it's part of the proposal. You write it out. You let them know that you're doing that.
Yeah.
I mean, that
And when you describe in your agreement the scope, you should probably add a section in there called bank feed rules and write in a description saying one of the things we're going to do, as part of the service is we're going to automate the crap out of this. Of course, you'll find more elegant language, but basically.
Actually, crap is a legal term.
Is it? Okay, perfect.
Okay. And I definitely see what you guys are saying. It's always about the value that you charge for it, but bank rules are so powerful. That's why I like to ask people's opinion onto it.
Yeah. I mean, that's why I asked you like what sort of the point was, because on the surface, when you ask the question, it just sounds like, it sounds petty. Right. But I understand your point when you lay it out. But again, I think like you said, you started to say, you found you weren't charging enough, and at the risk of sounding harsh, my response to that is that's your fault. Right.
I fully accept that. We're working on it.
Yeah. So I think the simple answer is just charge more because you know the value of what you're delivering. You just explained it. Right.
But let them know too.
Yeah. Make sure they understand it, it's funny.
They don't know what it takes to get a good set of clean books.
And this is a perfect time then probably to go into the next subject that I chose from the Facebook group for today, which was really Laura's question. And it goes to, charging your fees and deciding what to charge your clients and how to charge. because this ties right into that. And you know, it's an interesting discussion. And I'll give you all the links directly to these if you don't want to be bothered browsing through the group to find them. They're all recent. I bookmarked these all as of last night. But if it gets active in here today, stuff can get buried quickly. But you know, it's an interesting discussion because people were starting to talk about how to explain the value to your client. And, you know, I had a response that I think you'll find interesting. And Veronica posted in here, she posted some videos that she's done on the subject specifically. So I certainly encourage you to check those out. But I wrote the comment in here, and it may be different for me just because of where I'm at with my business and practice and everything. But I said, I'm not going to waste time trying to convince the client of the value. I know what the value is to me, and either they're willing to pay it or they're not. That's kind of my stance. I take a bit of a hard stance on that, but I can also afford to. I'm in a position where I can turn clients away if I don't want to work with them, right? If you're new and you're starting out and you need clients, you know, more desperately, let's just say, you might not be in a position to take that stance. But at the end of the day, it's not hard to explain the value to a client because you do exactly like what we're talking about here with your case, Matthew. And you explain, hey, we have a very specialized process here that we feel adds tremendous value, because at the end of the day, the client doesn't really care, nor should they need to care what it takes for us to get the job done. But what the client does and should care about is what they're getting as a result of that job that we do, right? So what's the ultimate output? They're getting the reports. And if they're getting the reports, those reports are current and accurate. And if those reports are current and accurate, it's because we've got systems that make it efficient enough that we can provide those current and accurate reports quickly, right? Weekly. And every week when they go out, they're up to date. I've explained this before. I'll explain it again. In our process, we do weekly updates on every client's books, and we schedule the reports to be sent to them 2 days after the day that we do it. So every client is on a schedule. Same day every week we update their stuff. And 2 days after that, the reports go out. That gives us a buffer in case we realize there's something else we want to update, or the client comes back to us with information that we feel is, has a substantial enough impact on those reports that are going to go out that we want to go back and make that update before they do.
Can I take this question a little bit deeper also?
Mm-hmm.
Because literally with Parkway, we're going through this exact thing right now. Mm-hmm. We started last year letting people know that we were increasing our pricing to try to get more appropriate value for what we do. But when we talk about bookkeeping, what's not being talked about here is payroll, is sales tax, is all the different nuances, accounts payable, accounts receivable. Mm-hmm. How do you charge for that stuff as well? Because we're now at a point, as we've matured in our process, we know better. So we can't just do a partial job and not do a good job with payroll and payroll reconciliations. And we can't just say, okay, sales tax, you take care of it, because I understand, if we have a good statement of work, that it's understood we aren't doing those things, but it's got to get done, and it's got to be done right. Because if it's not, we got to fix it.
Right.
So how do you charge for that?
So there's I have really two answers for you on that. And if anybody else has thoughts, please feel free to jump in. So first, if you look at my pricing table on my site, I show you how we cover for this kind of thing. Bottom line, if somebody needs sales tax, I'm putting them in Avalara, or LumaTax or TaxJar or something like that. Because I'm not going to do sales taxes myself. It's not a good use of my time. We talked about that recently, actually, on one of these Zooms. So sales tax, I'm just not going to do it. I'm going to make them use Avalara. And notice my language, because a lot of people get into these conversations in our groups where they say, oh, how do you sell the client on using Avalara? And the answer is you don't. You just make them use it. You tell them, you're hiring me for my expertise. I'm providing the service you hired me for. If you have sales tax to deal with, my services include the fact that you're going to use Avalara to do sales taxes. Why? Because Avalara I can rely on. I know they're going to do it right. And most people who are doing sales tax returns themselves are probably doing it wrong. They don't even know it. They think they're doing it right, but they don't know all the little nuances that Avalara has in their algorithms, where they can analyze what zip code a customer is in, and based on that, what the sales tax implications truly are. And ultimately, let's say Avalara gets it wrong. let's say there's that potential. It doesn't matter to me because they assume the responsibility for it as soon as they're doing it. So I don't care. Avalara is going to do the sales taxes for me. I'm never going to do sales tax. Very, very rare exceptions. Like I have one client where his sales taxes are so simple. But the truth is, I'm doing his sales taxes for him, and I know we're not getting it 100% right because he's in California, and I'm sure that I'm not breaking down every sale in every district where it needs to be, right?
So Sarah Laidlaw says that only works if all sales tax activity moves through sales receipts and invoices.
Thank you.
Well, you have to set up the bookkeeping that way, though. If there's sales tax to deal with, then you absolutely have to do it that way. There's no other way to do it. I don't understand.
What about restaurants?
What about them? Restaurants, they're all in all the sales take place in one physical location, so that's easy.
Absolutely.
That's really easy.
So to tie the
Then you just need between alcohol and food. Those are taxed at different rates.
Okay, but then you have to have your POS system, and most POS, I don't know of any restaurant with a POS system that doesn't distinguish between alcohol and other food sales, because there's other reasons why those need to be separate too.
I'm agreeing with you, and I think that as a solution provider, that this all should be rolled up under us. And I have the same thought process as you said. It's not a partial solution what we're offering. If somebody wants to piecemeal their stuff out, that's going to cause more problems to me than it would be for somebody to say, hey, I'm the expert in the area. I went to school for this. If you went to school for accounting or bookkeeping, then you should be doing this. But I'm the expert. You're better off letting me handle this and you run your business. I don't know anything about building a house. I don't know anything about building boats, but I do know about accounting. So,
right.
I agree with both of you guys, and I want to tie the two pieces together. So thank you. I wanted to push on this because I bet there's a lot of people out there that kind of are going through some of the same stuff that we are. We're working to make that transition, and we firmly believe like we should be providing a full package all-in-one service, but going from super low price to higher one, we're just feeling the growing pains through that at the time, and we are transitioning people out because they don't want to grow and pay for that stuff. And it makes it tough to then you have to refill the coffer with the right people as you shoo away the ones that don't want to pay for what you really have to do. So
right.
I hope this helps somebody.
Matthew, that brings up a couple of, I think, really good points and thoughts I want to share with you on that. First, one of the best ways to raise your rates is just do it on new clients coming in, right?
Yeah.
A lot of people get worried and caught up in, how do I go to my existing clients? Don't. Reward them for their loyalty. Don't hassle them with increasing your rates. But the next new client that comes in gets charged the new rate that you want to start charging. What'll happen is over time, you'll have all these new clients at the higher rates, and then you'll feel a lot more confident in going back to your existing clients and saying, hey, I need to raise your rates now, because you will need to in order to keep up with them with the other clients who are paying more, right? And so and plus you'll have leverage. So if the client says, no, screw you, I'm not paying I'm not paying any more money, then you're in a position of leverage where you can say, okay, then I'm sorry, we'll have to part ways because, this is, I need to run my business. I haven't raised your rates in however many years it's been, we've got to raise your rates to keep up. Otherwise I can't pay you the same kind of attention that you deserve and that you're accustomed to, right? That's what that comes down to.
Value pricing.
Yep. Now, back to your other question about trying to figure out the pricing when you have all these different things like sales tax and payroll. I haven't gone over this in a while, but what I've shown people, and they've really liked this process, is if you're still looking at my screen, notice I have the sample company's balance sheet up.
Yeah.
You see this? So the balance sheet, as I've often talked about, is your checklist for how to keep the books together, right? It's got everything you need to manage for this company. The P&L all ties into somewhere on the balance sheet eventually, right? So the balance sheet is what I used as my checklist for managing this company's bookkeeping, right? It's got everything. So if there's sales taxes to deal with, I've got a sales tax liability account on here. If there's payroll taxes to deal with, there's a payroll tax liability account on the balance sheet. So what I have taught in the past is you can literally take this balance sheet and dump it into an Excel sheet or a Google sheet, right? And then I have a system of weights and rates. So I say, I'm going to weigh what it's going to take to manage this part of the bookkeeping, the checking account, right? That means downloading, entering, reconciling, all of it. I have to manage this checking account for them. I have to manage the savings account for them. What do I have to do to manage accounts receivable? Maybe they do their own invoicing and they do their own collections. Maybe there's not much I need to do on their accounts receivable except make sure they're looking at their aging report once a week or whatever, right? So maybe this would get less weight than these two, right? And so I go down this list. I usually weigh the undeposited funds with a 0 because it's tied right into the checking and savings account, and I've already weighed that there. So I'll usually weigh undeposited funds with 0, not much to manage there. Once in a while, it might be something old in there that needs to get cleaned out because somebody double posted something, whatever, so it doesn't usually take much. Inventory, definitely going to give that a weight, right? And for the most part, I weigh these things with like either 1s or 0s. Either it's something that's going to take resources to manage or it isn't, right? But you can go in between or above or below, however you choose to do that. Then I take that weight and I multiply it by a rate. I used to use 85. The thinking was that before I went to value priced, to charge for bookkeeping services, I would charge like $85 an hour typically, right? So I used the 85 as kind of the rate. So you take the weight of each account that you're going to manage times that rate to get a total, extend that down, add it all up. That's your monthly fee for both the cleanup work and the ongoing bookkeeping. I use the same amount. That was the other part of the discussion here that came up is, do you charge a different rate for cleanup versus what you do when you're just doing the ongoing bookkeeping? And my answer is no, I charge the same. A lot of clients seem to think we should charge less for the cleanup because for some reason, because it's in the past, it's worth less. But my answer to that is no, actually it takes more work to do because I've got to hunt you down to get the information I need because it's old, right? And it's harder to get. So it's actually more work. So I'm giving you a break by only charging you what I charge going forward, And one thing, by the way, that I haven't mentioned in a while, but I'll mention it here because it's appropriate, is, years ago I had taken this client on and I had this exact conversation. I was charging him in those days like $350 for each month of cleanup that needed to get done. And when it came time to discuss the ongoing fees, I said I wanted to charge him the same $350 a month. And he had the same, why am I getting charged the same as what you charge me for the cleanup? Shouldn't it be less? And I said no. I said, in fact, if anything, I should be charging you more for the cleanup, but I'm giving you a break. But here's the kicker, because he still was like on the fence with me. But when I was done with the cleanup, I logged in with him via Zoom and I went through his balance sheet with him. And this guy knew nothing about accounting or bookkeeping. He was a realtor, right? And his prior accountants were sending him, I swear to God, reports that looked like they were printed from a dot matrix printer out of probably some archaic like data faction accounting system. Anybody remember data faction? Like really old DOS-based business management software.
Doesn't that still exist for the
I think
filming?
they do now have, because they use it in the entertainment industry
Yeah.
still. But anyway, so this is the context. He knew nothing, but I went through and I shared my screen, reviewed his balance sheet with him, and throughout he started remarking what a cool program QuickBooks was, how organized it was. He liked how you could easily move something because there was something I put in printing that he wanted in advertising because it was printing signs for his open houses, and so I made the change real quick right in front of him. And by the time we were done with that hour or so that I spent with him, I hadn't even mentioned it. I figured I was going to have to follow up with him on the conversation about the fees. Involuntarily, he came to me and said, Seth, by the way, I'm good with the fee. He saw the value after I went through it all with him, even though he knew nothing about it.
He sold it. Yeah.
And so I sold it to him by actually just teaching him what his own books look like. Right? And it wasn't that hard. I didn't have to be an amazing teacher. I just had to have the patience and be willing to take the time to go through it with him and make sure that he understood how it worked. And now he had a clear picture of what I was up to, what I was doing for him, and now he really appreciated the value. I mean, that came out loud and clear when I didn't even have to bring up the fees, and he not only brought them up but said, I'm good, right? Clearly, after going through that process with him, not only did he see the value, he was kind of blown away. He was probably thinking, crap, I'm glad I'm not getting charged more. You did say crap was a proper legal term, right?
Yes. Yeah.
All right, just checking.
Seth, I have a couple things. Linda Artisani says she raised her rates when she converted her clients from desktop.
Where are these comments, by the way? I'm not seeing them.
Facebook.
Where on Facebook? I'm looking at the live video feed. Oh, I'm looking in the between wall and main thing. Hold on.
So Linda raised her rates when she converted everyone from desktop to QB Online. Larry says, tell your clients that you are raising rates on new clients so the old clients do not refer others to the same pricing.
That's
Very
good.
good point.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Very good point. Thank you, guys. I was trying to also kind of use our journey and the pain points that we're feeling to try to help other people that might be on that journey of value pricing and trying to go from, too cheap to a true profession. So this is all very helpful information.
Yeah, and generally speaking, what I've always found is the more I've raised my rates, the more respect I got for it.
That's true.
As long as you're providing value and you're
Yep.
giving the client what they need.
Yeah, and that, of course, has to be at the foundation of all of it, is that you know what you're doing and you're good at what you do. Like, really good at what you do.
Back in my car audio days, I used to, it's always kind of frustrated me forever. I'd get paid $150 an hour to tune somebody's car, make it sound great, right? $150 an hour. But when I started in bookkeeping, we started at 35 or 45, right? We got it up to like 65. And if we didn't talk about bookkeeping, we talked about accounting, we would get 85. And then if we started talking about workflow, it became 125, 150 an hour. So finally got back to the car audio days.
Yep. And I want to go back to Sarah Laidlaw's comments about the sales tax, because now I'm reading the comments and I understand that there are cases where you can't use sales receipts, but you have two choices on that. Either you don't serve those clients because it's too much of a pain in the ass, or you have to charge a lot more because it's more labor intensive to get that work done. Right?
You do serve those clients and make it a niche.
Right. But if you're going to do that, you need to charge extra. You need to charge a lot more because you aren't able to automate with Avalara. My choice in my own business at Nerd Enterprises, business model wise, was to choose professions that, frankly, I could automate the crap out of all day long. I would never go into the kind of business where I couldn't post sales receipts to deal with sales taxes. I just wouldn't want to, because I don't want to deal with that kind of stuff. I want to live in a world where I can use the technology that's right in front of us to automate, and just get this stuff done so efficiently without sacrificing any quality. That's always the caveat, right? Because sometimes we think, well, more efficient could be sloppy, right? So I want to make sure that's clear. The efficiency is not worth it if it's going to be sloppy. It has to be just as accurate or more accurate, if anything. And so that's what I look for in my tech, is that it's going to increase efficiency, not only without sacrificing any quality, but if anything, it also needs to somehow be able to improve the quality of the information, right? Because at the end of the day, like I said before, what I'm delivering to clients is the outputs, which are the reports. That's why I place such emphasis on reporting. And I'm surprised sometimes because based on some of the comments I see people make or the way they talk about the service that they provide, I wonder if a lot of people aren't putting much emphasis on the reports, which makes me wonder, okay, then why are you doing this? If the emphasis isn't almost entirely on what kind of reports can I produce now that I've done a month's worth of bookkeeping and financial accounting, what am I doing it for? If only just to produce a tax return at the end of the year, fine, then charge $250 a month and do the bare minimum, because that's all that's worth to me.
That's the defining
That
difference.
is an absolutely valid point, Seth. One that took me a long time to come to grips with.
Mm-hmm. What do you mean? Clarify that.
There are a lot of people that only want you to do enough information so they can file their tax return at the end of the year.
Right.
You
And I
have
don't want
to
those
find out from your client what it is they're looking for.
Yeah.
You could be overkill and you're just really not a good fit because that's not what they want.
Yep. I don't want those clients. You know, if a client comes in kind of telling me that's all they're interested in, then I tell them I'm going to be way too expensive for what you're asking for. Bottom line.
We played with an idea for like the last, this will be the second year, of having a maintenance fee for certain clients where it basically pays for software to be up, kept up. So QuickBooks Online is connected all the time. Ledger Sync is connected all the time. So we have the data, and then we do a rebuild for them at the end of the year. So they're not paying X amount per month. It ends up saving some money that way. But because we can do the rebuild so quick, it becomes a value to both parties, but it's a very, very basic cut and dry, cash in, cash out concept.
Right.
So,
and by the way, going back to Larry's comment, tell your clients that you're raising your rates so they don't refer clients for the same money. I actually have a bilateral NDA in my agreement that they sign that essentially binds them. They're not allowed to share what rates I'm charging them with anyone. That's part of my bilateral NDA clause. Now, that doesn't mean they're not going to do it, but at the end of the day, if they refer somebody and the person they referred says, hey, you know, so-and-so who referred me says they're only paying this much, I'm going to say, well, then I need to go raise their rates. Thank you for reminding me. I need to go raise their rates now, next, right? That's kind of my response to that. So, and Linda says, plus data entry is boring. It really is.
Data entry sucks.
It really does.
Why Linda tricks me into doing it for her all the time somehow.
I'd rather stick 9-inch nails through my eyelids.
The band or actual nails?
Both. Okay, we're technically out of time, but let's see if we can quickly cover one more subject here. I like the fee ones, but actually before we do that, going back to Laura's ultimate question was, you know, she has a potential client with $200,000 in revenue, so small business, you know, and she couldn't figure out what to charge them. And so when I see a small business like this, it's not something I would take on. You know, personally, I would just say that's not the kind of client I'm looking for. I'm looking for generally companies doing at least $1 million a year in revenues, because my experience is companies this small won't appreciate the value of what we're doing. And most of those companies only need it compiled for the sake of doing a tax return. But that said, if you want to go after that niche, that's what Chris Reagan does all day long. He goes after these smaller companies, and that's all he does is compile a set of books. So then he also does their returns. And Chris Reagan's got probably the best pricing table out there that I've seen. And if you look at it and you do the math on his pricing table, you'll see that typically, because he bases it on the revenue. So you'll see that he typically charges about 2% of revenue, and then there's lots of add-ons only for the basic bookkeeping. So if they need sales taxes done, that's going to cost extra. If they need payroll done, that's going to cost extra. Everything else is an add-on. So he starts off very cheap, right? 2% of revenue, especially on 200,000. I quickly did the math here and told her $350 per month is about 2%, slightly more. So but that's a good benchmark to use. It's another way to price it if you're really unclear. But my favorite way, Matthew, going back to your question from earlier, when I'm really not clear and I don't feel like I can just stick them in one of my monthly plans or just do it for $500 a month, which is what I typically do these days, is I just say, you know what? Any cleanup job, I'm just going to charge $500 for each month that I got to clean up. That's usually more than enough. And I'm well covered for any contingencies, any unforeseen things. I have plenty of room in there at that rate. And the clients usually agree to it. But the other way is using my system of weights and rates on the balance sheet. That has proven to be very effective, where I've just multiplied it across, added it all down, and said, here's the amount per month that we're going to charge.
I really like that. That's the gem of the day for me. The concept of, like, I assume the multiplier you're kind of looking at is, okay, how many what kind of hours per month am I going to spend on it, or something of that nature?
When I originally developed the concept, it was based on the idea that I was focusing on the bank account specifically. And I said, typical bank account, to do the whole job, right? Get the data in there and reconcile it all, about an hour per month on average, right? Yeah. Now, usually when clients have 2 or more bank accounts, what I also discovered is that usually there's one account that's got most of the activity and the other accounts are very light, right? There's maybe a savings or a money market and maybe a payroll account. So they transfer money into the payroll account just to cover payroll. Again, minimal activity there. I'm going to do the payroll already anyway as a separate part of this process. So, and reconciling the payroll accounts is generally going to be very easy to do. So the theory was, I'm going to spend on average an hour per month. If I have 2 or more bank accounts, I'm going to assign them each an hour, because the account with the main activity might actually take more than an hour. But by assigning an hour to all the bank accounts, it all balances out. And most of the time I felt in my favor, if anything, if you want to look at it that way. So the theory was, I wanted to, and this was years ago when I was doing this, I wanted to charge, if I was going to charge by the hour, I wanted to charge $85 an hour. So if I assigned a weight of 1, my thinking is it's going to take me about an hour a month to manage this account, whether it's a bank account or their accounts receivable. Inventory, I might assign a higher weight to, because inventory is harder to manage, right? So I might assign a weight of 2 to inventory, because I have to follow up with the client, make sure they're doing periodic inventory adjustments, getting me the information, posting the inventory adjustments, running inventory reports, also a more complex area. So I might give a higher weight to something like inventory, right? Fixed assets, I'm not going to weigh anything on, because what is it? Every once in a while, they buy a piece of equipment. It's going to be part of the banking process anyway. So I'm not going to ding them for that anymore. Accounts payable, another thing to manage. Give that a weight of 1. I've got to stay on top of them, make sure their bills are getting paid. Credit cards, just like bank accounts, and then like I'm looking at the sample company. I know I'm not sharing my screen still, but it's got Arizona Department of Revenue and Board of Equalization payable, which means they're paying sales taxes probably in the state of Arizona and in the state of California, right? So we have sales taxes in 2 states that we're paying. So that this system has worked really well for me when I've needed it to. The only reason I don't still do it now is because, like I said, eventually I just said, screw it. I'm just going to quote 500 for each month of cleanup and throw that out there. And most of the time they've been agreeing to it. I had one client last year who, gave me a little bit of pushback. I did the math, looked at how many months I had to clean up, and I realized it was a whole year plus about 2 or 3 months into the current year. And so I figured if I knocked off $100 per month, that was going to look like a huge savings to him, but then add in the few extra months on the end, and I'm still getting the same amount for all the cleanup work that I was going to charge him for just the prior year. So in the end, he was very happy, and it was fine with me because, again, these days when I'm doing a cleanup job, it's very, very fast because I'm going to get all the data that I need in some kind of raw flat file form so that it can all be imported. And the nice thing about doing cleanup work is when I'm importing it, reconciliation is 2 clicks because I'm only importing transactions that actually cleared. So once I'm done with my imports, reconciling is literally punch in the ending date and balance and then select all and finish reconcile, and I'm done, right? There will never be a difference unless I screwed up the import somehow. So
That's a different story altogether.
What do you mean?
If you screwed up the import.
Well, yeah, obviously you have to be careful and make sure you map your import correctly, but that becomes a skill unto itself. And again, it's another one of those things that I'm going to say in this day and age, it's a skill we need to have.
Excel.
Yep, and it does go back to Excel for sure. Adam says, I do the same as Chris. I have add-ons for everything outside basic. After 1 million, I switched to a more value pricing, which is where value pricing belongs. Since I switched, I close about 70% of my prospects. Yeah, I think for smaller clients, definitely the way to go is percent of revenue. It just makes sense. But all that's going to get them is bank and credit card accounts reconciled each month, right? Nothing else. Everything else is an add-on for payroll, for sales tax, for whatever. I have add-ons on my pricing table that are significant. If you want a 24-hour turnaround on things, that's an extra $500 a month because you're asking me to pull more of my resources and dedicate them to you, right? I found that trying to do invoices on a client's behalf is too much of a pain in the ass. I don't want to do it. So that's another $500 a month. Meanwhile, by the way, I've developed a really good process for that if somebody is willing to pay that money. But I'm only going to do it if they're willing to pay that money. And then using Smartsheet, I have a great process where I can prepare the invoice, drop the link. I love QuickBooks Online for this because I can drop the link to the live invoice, put that in Smartsheet, share it with the client. The client can comment in Smartsheet about whatever they want changed in the description of the invoice or whatever. I can make that change and then just notify them the same live link is still the same invoice. Now it'll be updated, right? So it's a really smooth process. Obviously, don't have time to go into it today, but the moral of the story is I have a process for it, but I'm still going to charge a lot because I don't really want to do it. It's too much back and forth, and it takes forever in my experience. Because, you'd think it should just take one round, right? You produce the invoice, they say make these changes, and then it can go. But all too often, I make those changes, and then they want more changes or other changes, or they don't like the changes I made, even though it was exactly what they told me to do. I've got too much of that nonsense.
So true.
Sorry, already sent them. My bad.
Yeah, really, imagine. I had this one architect client, first time I tried to do this with somebody, and it's funny, he actually disengaged with me because he was unhappy with my services because it was taking me forever to get his invoices out because he was so nitpicky about every little thing, and I would do exactly what he asked me to do, and it still wasn't good. He still wanted things changed. The guy was a piece of work, actually. He in his conversations with me, he made it clear that he sort of prided himself on being a pain in the ass to people. I'm like, that's a great thing to be proud of.
Yeah, no, thank you. No need for that relationship.
Definitely not. All right, so you know what? We'll to be continued. We're over time, but I don't know. I think this was good stuff. I hope you thought it was good stuff. I like this. I think that's what we're going to do a lot more often this year is we're going to pick on questions from the forum and just discuss them because it's great stuff and it's a great way to learn, and hopefully it's a great value add for everybody in the Between Wall and Main Strategy Forum group on Facebook.
Thank you, Seth.
Thanks, Seth.
Got it.
Good weekend.
Great weekend.